Good evening. Good evening. How y'all doing today? Y'all okay?
Great, great.
Great.
All right,
Thank
all
you.
right. Just trying to wonder whether y'all hear me or not. Y'all hear me good. Okay. Thank y'all for tuning in. To all our viewers out there, thank you for tuning in. Like and share. Comment if you wish after y'all see what these wonderful ladies will be telling you all. I won't be here long. I got an event I have to go to, and Mr. Campbell will be taking over, and well, he'll be running the show anyway, like he do every week. And AB is out this week, so AB is out for the next 2 weeks. He'll be back in the first of the month. He's So tonight we have some women, some awesome women that'll be telling you their story. This is Incarceration to Incorporation, our weekly Friday show, which shows that once you've been through the system, that it's not over. Once paid, a debt is no longer a debt. And we want people to understand that if they need the resources, they need information on how to get to those resources, job opportunities, support, whatever kind of help that we can give them, we try to make sure that we can relay that here to those returning citizens. So without further ado, I'm going to let Mr. Campbell take over and introduce these ladies and get on with the show.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I'm excited about other opportunities on lovely platform to share who they are and what they do. As we've already talked about, AB had the mind to provide a platform. Then Jude is broadcast gave us this opportunity to do just that. And so, what I would first of all, ladies, I want you to tell us who you are and also what is your relationship to incarceration, just as an introduction. We'll start with you first, Miss Marianne.
Yes, thank you, Julius. Thank you for having me here. I'm Marianne Gunner, and I'm a doctoral student. I live in Arkansas, but I'm a doctoral student with the University of Louisiana Monroe, and I'm a therapist, and I work a lot with trauma, a lot with women, families, family systems. And I got interested in years ago. While I have no personal relationship with incarceration, I became interested years ago just in how our nation addresses incarceration, especially women, mothers, the horribly systemic impact on children, on entire families. It's just a system that's there are probably some good programs, I'm very sure, but I've been hearing about some good programs. But overall, there's much to be done. And I became very interested in that topic. And so I'm doing my doctoral dissertation right now on that very topic, interviewing women, mothers who have been formerly incarcerated. They're out now, who were separated from their children. And I will tell you, just the stories I hear are absolutely beautiful and just restores my faith in human nature, I can tell you.
All right, thank you. And we want to hear a few of those stories also, and a lot more of what's on your heart.
Thank you.
But I wanted to, well, it looked like Tracy just cut off. Is she in? All right. Hold on. Give Tracy an opportunity to tell us a little bit about who she is. Looks like her computer went out.
I think she's buffering out.
Transitioning?
Yeah, she's
Okay.
buffering out.
All right.
You gotta be. That's why we try to tell everybody to be on the computer, so you won't have this problem. But we know sometimes you get caught in traffic on the way home, and this is a 6 o'clock show. People get off at 5 o'clock, and there's Tracy.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you go into dead zones when you travel.
Yeah, I just
There
pulled
she
in
goes.
up to my house.
Can you hear us, Tracy?
I can.
All right. Well, this is your opportunity. Tell us a little bit about who you are and your relationship to incarceration.
Okay, so my name is Tracy Harris. I am the mother of 2 adult children. I have 2 grandchildren as well. My relationship to incarceration, oh my goodness, I committed felonious criminal acts in 1998 and in 2004. Both were credit card transaction fraud. And as a result of the second offense, I had to serve 61 days in the Claxton Detention Center in 2004. I was placed on 3.5 years probation after that. Once I was released, well, let me rewind a little bit. When I was in, I realized that there was no rehabilitation for people. I was in jail with drug addicts, drug dealers, people who had been arrested, women who had been arrested for prostitution, people shoplifting, theft, whatever the crime was, but there was no rehabilitation. You're there all day, every day with nothing. There may have been GED services at the most offered, but no skill set to be able to walk away from that particular infraction in your life to be able to do something better. So hence the recidivism rate being as high as it is, because there's no rehabilitation in the facilities. When I got out, I was determined that that wasn't something that I liked. I did not like being incarcerated. I didn't like being away from my children. I didn't like being away from my family because I grew up in Savannah. So I was about an hour away from my family. So if they had to visit, they had to travel. And just went on a journey for my life to be transformed. I got my degree. My first degree is in psychology. My undergrad is in psychology. My master's degree is in seminary, worship studies, and worship leadership. And I'm actually either considering a second degree in PsyD or a second master's in some kind of clinical psychology, because I do believe that we all need a place and outlet to be able to go to. Today, as a result of years and years and years and lots of rejection in the workplace, I have a very lucrative job in corporate America with a very, very, very good benefit package. But it's only after years of checking backgrounds and not passing, and checking backgrounds and not passing. And because I had the skill set and the education to match, my background would keep me from being able to get into those places. And today, that time, the doors have been opening, and that time is over, where because of the time that it's been almost 20 years for me. So it doesn't weigh as heavy as it did when I first got out of jail and it was first an infraction on my background. I don't even know if people can see it anymore with how old it is. I also own businesses. I sell Mary Kay. I do self-sabotage counseling. So I do lots of things. I have a nonprofit organization. I figured out whatever it was that I was going to put my hands to do was going to prosper, and I wasn't going to allow that to be the catalyst to what the rest of my life was going to look like.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome. And I want you to share more, especially about your nonprofit, but I want you to share a little bit about, remember the title, Ladies in Lockup, Overcoming Life's Obstacles. I want you to share a little more about some of the things that you realized when you were incarcerated, but the stories of the ladies is. And then, Miss Marianne, you, as you are listening to these stories and encounters, I would love for you to share from a counseling perspective the effect that incarceration has on women. So tell us a little bit first, Ms. Marianne, incarceration has on women from your understanding, the stories that you've heard.
Yes, thank you, Julius. The women I've talked to, and also the review of the literature that I've done for my research, it's incredible. The incarceration of women, I believe, has increased about 750% since 1980. And I think about 80% of incarcerated women are mothers, separated from their children. And as I began my research, I began seeing that, the other effects, that women are single parents, heads of households of dependent children, roughly twice as much as men are, and they earn significantly less. So that means, that translates that when mothers go to prison, they're much more frequently separated from their children. And then systemically, the effect on the children is absolutely devastating. I don't know if you're familiar with the study done by the Centers of Disease, Centers of Disease and Prevention, I believe, and the Kaiser Foundation of 17,000 participants several years ago, where they came up with a thing called ACEs, ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And one of those experiences is having a parent who is incarcerated, being separated from a parent who's incarcerated. And those ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, can impact children far into adulthood, even to the point of resulting in a shortened lifespan. These children are impacted on every single level, everything from medical issues, academic, school, stigma, poverty, hunger, crime, delinquency, dropouts, chaotic relationships, trauma, and that's the children. The mothers, I have found that, boy, do we have a stereotype about anyone who goes to prison, but very often I find women who go to prison, and women who go to prison, you know what? Every single mom I've talked to so far has just about blown me out of my chair. Everything that I came into this, thinking and believing and thinking that I knew was shattered. Stereotypes were shattered. And I came away seeing women who are actually intelligent and kind, and they retained their humanity. Many of them almost lost their humanity in prison, mainly separated from their children. But they managed to hold on, and they are just incredible. And many of them, some of them said, prison was one of the best things that happened to me. And I said, how is that? Explain that. And they said, it took me to my knees, but it brought me back up. And where women had access to good programs, such as education, parenting, counseling, those women, it took a long time, but many of them were involved in various spiritual programs, maybe some ministries in church, and where they were rarely allowed really good access to their children, they managed to hold on and hold on for their children. So many of them really suffered in prison, being separated from their children. We also had the side effect that many women in prison are still, if you can believe it, archaically shackled and handcuffed during labor and delivery. When they deliver in prison, the nurses associations have long since shown that is very dangerous to the health and life of both the mother and infant. But I think recidivism decreases where there are good programs, parenting programs, family programs that allow, that keep that family unit cohesive and as best as it can. And, one of the main prevailing themes I have seen and studied is that, when mom goes to prison, the whole family goes to prison, in effect. Everybody's incarcerated with mom, the children, grandma, everyone. And those women, those children are really fortunate if they can go to a loving family member, but sometimes they can't. And the moms, they are just, I've heard various stories. Some moms have really been demoralized and not treated very humanely. Almost their children used as a punishment of sorts, of not being able to see their children. I believe that there are some states that will permanently terminate parental rights upon the birth of the child for no other reason than mom being in prison. I talked to one mom not long ago who said that she did not have access to any programs because she simply wasn't in prison long enough, and with the understanding that if she had been in there maybe over a year, she could have gotten access to some programs. But because she wasn't there long enough, I think she had what she considered a good parenting program, but she would have really liked access to more. And any parent, anyone, I think, in my opinion, in prison really needs rehabilitation, not punishment. When I'm writing my dissertation, I use 4 theories: systems theory, attachment theory, punishment theory, and feminist theory. And I found that punishment is it's usually pretty non-productive. It's actually anti-productive, I think. And we I don't know what it is about our nation, but we seem to be stuck in this idea that punishment works better than rehabilitation, which it's not cost effective. It creates hostility, creates violence. If I, like Ms. Harris was saying a few minutes ago about rehabilitation, I really resonated with that if we could really get into the mindset of rehabilitation works, it will save us money in our economy. It helps our entire system. But and I believe I
Miss
don't have.
Marianne,
Yes, sir.
I want you to, on that particular point, when you said if we could get into the mindset of policymakers that punishment is not beneficial, but rehabilitation is. I want you to speak to that a little more. But before you do that, you gave us some statistics. Let us hear from Tracy about the real life experience of that inside. But also, Tracy, tell us, was your transition smooth or difficult when you came home, and why?
So my transition, when I went, I knew, so I was employed. I went to court in 2004. I was sentenced, and then I had to wait for a bid. So I was fully employed. I was actually the manager at a rental car place at the airport. And so I worked and I was gainfully employed. I had an apartment, I had a vehicle. And I think on a Thursday afternoon, probably about 6 months after I had been sentenced, I got the call telling me that I had to turn myself in. So I had to resign from my job and I had to turn myself in by that Sunday to be able to go and serve my time. I knew how long I was going to be gone for, so I paid my rent. Um, so I knew I was coming back home to a place. So I was able to set myself up for that success. I know that's not the case in most situations. Most often, you don't have a job, or if you do have a place, you have to quit your job. You don't have the money to do that. Fortunately, I was able to do that. So I served my time. I came back out and I still had my place. I did not have to tell my landlord or anything that I went to jail or any of that. I didn't have to report any of those things. But despite that being the case, it was still difficult because I came out and I had a place, but I still needed to find employment. I still needed to figure out what I was going to do because then I had the stigma of being a felon on my background. So that was the difficult part, more so than coming out and having to totally reestablish my life from ground zero. I still had to pick up the pieces. I had to get my children from my mom and, really talk to them and explain to them that I wasn't going anywhere. So there was a lot of healing that had to go on. I know that their trust had been betrayed. And although they were young and they didn't explain that to me, I understood that I had caused rejection and abandonment and distrust in my children. So I worked very hard to reestablish that place in them so that they could know that mom wasn't going anywhere else, no matter what. So I took jobs I worked at McDonald's, I worked at daycares, I worked at Subway. I did whatever it was that I had to do to ensure that I wasn't going to fall back into the same patterns again versus before the things that I did and the choices that I made before I got arrested.
All right, so now I want to put the two together because Miss Marianne, you heard her story, the difficulty of transitioning. Now that's not the case for everybody, as she said. My reality was different. I served 26 years in prison, but when I came home, I had family support, community support, gainful employment. So I had those things, but there are thousands who don't have those key elements for success. So, I want you, Miss Marianne, to tell us what can we do, community, first of all, but also individually. What can we do to change the mindset of policymakers so that they can help to reconcile some of these things that we're talking about today?
Thank you. As I've looked around the country, there are some really wonderful programs, whether they are grassroots efforts, church efforts, ministry volunteers that are really passionate and caring about this, and they think outside the box. And that's what it's going to require, thinking outside the box, that Punishment doesn't do the job. It's healthy. I'll make up my own word there, but it just doesn't help, and it creates problems. Just a little side note, something I was surprised to find as I did my review of the literature was that men and women do prison pretty differently. Women are a little more, you might say, hardwired to be relational. Men, when they, and this isn't an indictment of men, but the research shows that men tend to be more violent in prison, whereas women, i.e. mothers, they are more relational. They form like pseudo family systems in prison. They are usually incarcerated for far less violent crimes. Usually if a woman goes to prison, it's I look at it as the end of a long road of often a life of trauma, abuse, chaotic families, deep unmet needs. I'm also a trauma therapist. I do a lot of trauma therapy, and I've never met a person yet who went to prison, male or female, that wasn't traumatized. Usually a lifetime of trauma. And so when those needs don't get met, that damage continues in the community, with your loved ones in the family, the children, and then it just continues intergenerationally. And so to punish that, it's like spanking a child when they fall down. It's just completely ineffective. So, you're asking about rehabilitation and, what women need, and they need help. They need care and decency and dignity and respect, and viewing their situation through an ecosystemic view, that these aren't people that come to prison because they're mean and they love prison and they just want to hurt people. They often are coming to prison because they didn't feel like they had any resources, maybe, or hungry, desperate. Who doesn't need care and dignity in that situation? And so if we can really remember that women, when we help moms, we help their children. And when you help their children, you help the next generation. You can't not do it that way. So these women, they need very good programs, consistent programs, like parenting help. All the moms I've talked to really benefited from some parenting programs. They need education. Lots of people go to prison without even a high school diploma. And you know how it is. If you don't have a GED, it's going to be really difficult to find a job. And then you get up on that pattern to where if you don't have a job, you could go back to prison. So they need counseling, and that's my heart because I'm a counselor. And so lots of trauma counseling, family counseling, anything that could be family friendly and kind of bring the family into the incarcerated mom's life and stop separating her. When I talked to a child one time and they said, I feel like I'm in jail too when my mom's in jail. And that's pretty representative of what's happening here, is that when mom goes to prison, the whole family goes to prison with her. And we need good trauma care. Again, these ladies are very often severely traumatized. Women are much greater risk of violence and sexual abuse in prison than men are. So they need good job skills, again, the single parenting issue. When mom comes out of prison and reintegrates back into the family, she's got to have a job. She's got to have some education. Like Miss Harris talked about that. Well, when you come back, you've got children to support, and to support them, you've got to have skills, you've got to have money. I talked to a mom the other day, several moms who've talked about when they were released, it was like just a precipitous drop, put on a bus or sent out of town or whatever. No resources, no food, No food? How do you not give food to somebody? Come on. Nothing, not even a token $20 bill to go get a meal or to get a hotel room, until you can get back on your feet. And, if we want people to succeed, we've got to help them to succeed. And to start there, we've got to take a different mindset that these are human beings and that, they need our respect and our dignity. And again, I've talked to lots of women who said, I want to work. I want to feel good about myself, and I want to be a good mom, and I want to work, but I can't find a job. And I talked to one mom who said that an employer kind of met her coming and said, "Oh, I heard you were in prison. You know what? Don't even think about applying for a job here." Yeah, it's a shame. I know I would hate to hear that. I don't know any person who would, excel by hearing stereotypical and judgmental talk like that. And, and I will tell you, sorry, go ahead.
I want to ask you a specific question, and because I want to let Tracy share something right now, but I want you to prepare for this question because, like you, we have seen the lack of commitment by so many different parties, if you will. If you could, because I know you are doing it, and I'm grateful for your counseling, for how you are helping the women. So I know you are doing it. My question to you, and you answer it after Tracy finishes, is how do we get policymakers, how do we get government officials to hear what we're saying and to implement what we are presenting? So you can prepare for that while Tracy shares this. Tracy, I heard you talk about your organization, and you heard what Ms. Marianne said, trauma. Every one of us have experienced trauma as a result of incarceration. But from hearing your story, you didn't allow it to make you bitter. You allowed it to make you better. Tell us a little bit about your organization and what are you doing now to have a voice as well for those that are voiceless?
So the umbrella of my organization is Destined by Design Global Impact. And one of the branches on the tree is it's self-sabotage counseling. And what I do is I do mentoring, I do discipleship from the Word of God because I'm in ministry, and really helping people to re-identify what self-sabotage looks like, the triggers that cause us to make some of the decisions that we make, dealing with soul trauma, understanding the root of why it is that we do what we do. It's not just because we woke up one day and we started making bad decisions or we were leaning towards bad choices or negativity, but something happened, some childhood trauma happened that caused us, that shaped and molded us into the thought processes and the patterns that we started to develop as we grow older. So that's one component. I have 2 fish and 5 loaves. That's my homeless initiative, and I feed the homeless. I've done it in almost every city that I live in. I do it in Atlanta, Georgia. And not only do I feed the homeless, but we also offer resources. I'm looking to make it on a larger scale. My ultimate dream is to be able to buy hotels, to be able to offer housing to those that are homeless and those coming out of jail so that they can transition. That's called Beauty for Ashes Transitional Center. And what it will do, it will offer housing. It will also offer banking skills. It will offer resume writing, interviewing skills, whatever the individual will need. And it wouldn't just be for women, but it will be for men and women so that they can get the skills, so that they can re-enter mainstream society and be given the tools and the resources that they need to not have to go back to those choices. I do believe that a support system is very important. Every component of your life, counseling, spiritual, financial, social, it is all important in rebuilding a life, be it you went to jail, you're coming off of drugs, you lost your job and you were unemployed for 2 years, I just believe if you have the right network and the right system to be able to give you some support until you get back on your feet, then success is inevitable. I do believe in blazing the trail. And so sometimes people that have gotten to a certain place, they don't reach back and they don't give out. They don't say, okay, hey, this is how I did this and let me pull you up. It's not always about giving a handout, but it's about pulling somebody up out of where they are. But my thoughts and to what you asked, Marianne, and just very briefly, I'll say this. I believe that systemic oppression is why our lawmakers and our government officials do what it is that they do. It is a system that keeps people going around in the same circles as far as being incarcerated is concerned. And until the systemic oppression is broken and we build structures that will overtake the systemic oppression, showing people that there's a better way, showing people that we have duplicatable business models, that they can come out, they can own lawn care businesses, they can own child care services. Those are things that you can come out, and if you have a background, you can get into that. You can become a business consultant in some multi-level, multi-tiered marketing business. You can do that even with a background. So it has to be that those types of duplicatable business structures are introduced. And I believe that they can be introduced in the correctional system so that when they come out with some type of certification and they can hit the ground running. But without that being introduced into the structure, then what do they know to do? They're left. I met several women who had no support and had nobody writing them letters, had no money on their books. They didn't even have money to be able to get home on the bus. And most often, I know where I was in Claxton, they didn't give them any money to get home on the bus. They put you out the gate, and if you didn't have anything, either you went walking or you sat outside the gate. And if you sat there too long, I saw them actually call the police on a lady that they released while I was there because she didn't have any place to go. So until those types of things are changed in the system and changed in the laws, then we're not gonna see any change until those correct structures are put in place so that they can have an answer as soon as they come out.
I love that. And as you get ready to also answer, Miss Marianne, we have the listeners that was saying Marie Jones is listening, but Sir D.P. Frazier also agrees that faith plays a huge component in the answer to these questions, and shares some Psalms 82, Isaiah 42, and Hebrews 13. So faith is a pivotal point in helping this. But I want to ask, did we lose her? I see you. Miss Marianne, you go ahead and answer the question.
Thank you. Right. I think some things that our policymakers could say, and I will tell you, I will dovetail on everything that Ms. Harris said, because she's absolutely spot on this, is that anything that we can do inside the network of the prison system, don't wait till these ladies are out. It's anticlimactic then. They have already fallen off the cliff by that time. Get these programs inside the prison. Quit looking at this as we've got to punish and lock them up, throw away the key. You know, we're here in the South. I'm in Arkansas. Tell you, I talk to people all the time. They are stunned that we feed people in prison. I cannot believe it. This is 2021. And they're like, you mean you give them health care? But you can see that's representative of the kind of really antiquated and horrible attitude that really prevails. Just an attitude that people in prison are beyond redemption. They're beyond hope. They deserve every horrible thing they get, including being raped in prison. They deserve it. And you know, we've just got to, our policymakers need to get behind and support and promote anything that will help education, help shift our thinking, because it's not just on a governmental level, it's on a social level. People in the community, they don't want to hear about people in prison. Only I think really kind, decent people, they care. And I've talked to a lot of them too. They really care. A lot of them, they don't know what to do. And if we could tell them, like we're doing right now, here's what you could do for this lady in prison. She needs a letter. She needs $5. Send that lady $5. Do you know how far $5 will go in prison? Help her. Another thing our policymakers could do is they need to hear the stories. They need to go and talk with these moms. And nobody knows these stories better than these moms do, and men. But I think things like mentors. I think Ms. Harris spoke to that a little bit. Good grief, what this lady's doing. She's a walking mentor, but mentoring these ladies on every step, pairing her with a good parent model, teachers. Boy, our teachers are all, and social workers are already heroes, especially in the context of COVID. But mentors in prison, and like the gentleman said a little bit ago, the spiritual aspect of the life. I'll tell you, about every lady I have talked to, the lady that gets their life turned around is the one who embraces her spirituality, and that can be religious or spiritual, whatever that looks like to her. But I'll tell you, on a personal nature, I am a Christian, and I do believe that the redemptive power of Jesus Christ for these ladies, and it's not just me, it's them telling me that, Christ turned my life around in prison. And, we can't ignore that's an important factor. I think other things like, here's the thing that I see a lot of is, we got to get outside that mindset, and this is where our policymakers can come in and be instrumental, is quit asking people on job applications and on college applications, what is their previous legal history. Even in my research, I make it plain right off the bat. I am not going to ask you the reason you were incarcerated. I'm not going to ask you for medical or legal or mental health records. Stop asking people, and even in my profession, stop asking people about a psychiatric diagnosis. We already have seen the literature on the overwhelming level of mental illness in prison, and it should not be there. It should be treated separately. But those are things on a policy level that needs to be changed, and our policy makers, they need to drive the boat on that, to be the voices and say, hey, community, we've got to take an entire different epistemology, a whole different view of how we look at people in prison, because it's a family problem. And I'll tell you, I'm going to be transparent here. Years ago, if you had told me, well, that lady, she needs a Pell Grant and she's in prison, I objected to that. I just thought that was an unnecessary expense of governmental funding. Well, with education comes transition. And so I completely changed my view on that. Now, of course, I believe these are the folks who they should be first in line. We need education in prison, and that is definitely a policy issue, on a federal level. We need college funding for people in prison. And I'm not saying people that you can only have gainful employment if you have a college degree. You don't. But you certainly need some education, GED, something. You need the opportunities. And the ladies, let me shoot your stereotypes here, community, because I've talked to several ladies who've gone to prison who have master's degrees, just like Ms. Harris does. And, I'm learning two words: assume nothing. Assume nothing, because you'll get your stereotypes flipped upside down.
Awesome. I like that too, Miss Marianne. So I want you now, Trey, because of the people that are listening, and we are appreciative of Miss Anna Davis. She's sharing and she sends her love, and also Miss Wanda. But we want you right now, Tracy, to speak to those women that are still incarcerated, because there are some that are listening on the radio, some that are listening on Facebook and YouTube. Speak to those women that are incarcerated right now, and also those returning citizens that have just come home, and encourage them. And then after you speak to them, Ms. Marianne, I want you to speak to others whether they're educationers, professors, whether community leaders. You speak to those that are on the outside and stir them and motivate them to know why it is important for us to come together. So you go first, Tracy. Speak to those ladies that need to be encouraged.
So, to those that are still in the prison cell and that are working through their sentence, first of all, keep your head up. That's the first thing. I want to implore you to know that the peace that passes all your understanding will guard your heart and mind through Christ Jesus. And if you think on those things that are lovely and are pure and of a good report, and I know in the midst of being in a jail cell surrounded by people who have their own issues, being away from your family, being away from your children, being away from life as you knew it, coming to the point of where what most people would consider ground zero, know that this is the rebuilding place. So then start to think about what you're going to do in the time that you are there, because you can come up with a plan, you can come up with a system, you can come up with a structure while you are where you are. This time does not have to be wasted time. If you understand anything about dung and growing and planting and gardening, it takes dung in order for us to grow. So if this is the dung that has been introduced into your life as a result of an adverse choice that you made, take this time and know that there is victory, there is success on the other side of this decision. This isn't the end all of your life. This isn't the end all. So know that when you are released, there is greater out there. There are opportunities, there are resources out there for you. No, but if it's national, if it's local, if it's on a state level, there are resources for you, and become connected to the people that are going to propel you into your next. Because sometimes what we have to do is we have to break away from the people that have been doing the same things. And I know that that's not always easy, because it's easy to fall back into familiarity, but you have to be willing and you have to be strong enough and know that you are strong. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are made in the image of the Most High God. And He didn't make a mess. He knew that you were going to do exactly what you did at the appointed time that you did it. And He has an expected end for everything that you're encountering. And to those that have gone through and have been released and that you're struggling, know that if you keep going with every step, because your steps have been ordered by God, and know that everything that you're going through, just as I've gone through, and it's taken years, it doesn't happen overnight. It is not a microwave process, but I have been transformed and I kept myself in a place. Hasn't been easy. No, it hasn't. Could I have easily fallen back? It would have been easy to default on many occasions and gone back into what it was that I used to do. But I was determined to keep my eyes on the prize. I set goals for myself and I exceeded those goals with the help of God, because He helped me to do exceedingly abundantly above all I could ask, think, or imagine. And today I'm a living testament that if you just keep going and keep going and keep going and don't give up. And is it going to be hard? Yes. Are you going to feel the weight of the world on your shoulders? Yes. I would not sell you a pipe dream, but I promise you, I am a living testament of what happens if you keep going, if you keep pressing. I've been homeless as a result of what it is that I did. I've been homeless. I slept in my car as recent as 2 years ago. I had to sleep in my car, because the pandemic happened and I lost a job and all kind of things happened in my life. But guess what? I kept going, because those things are only proof to me how strong I am. Did I go through some bouts of depression? I did, but I also had to reach out for help. And when I couldn't get any psychological help, guess what? I cried out to God. He has been my very present help in the time of trouble. So know that these are just the stepping stones that are going to propel you into the greatness that God has set before you.
That's beautiful.
You, Miss Mary Ann,
Wow.
you speak to those leaders, those policymakers, those educators, and just how can we do better?
Thank you, Julius. I don't know if I could ever top what Ms. Harris said. That is so inspirational and beautiful. You know, that boy, that lesson applies to every single one of us, but, I would say respectfully, ladies, gentlemen who are listening, if you're a policymaker, if you're a lady working at home, I don't care who you are. You don't have to be in the White House or in the state capitol or behind a big desk. Every one of us, myself included, we are called to take care of our brother and our sister. And, we revere motherhood. And, my role is to research moms in prison. But I say this about men too, that we are called to take care of our most vulnerable. A society is known for how it takes care of its most vulnerable, and people in prison and their children. Are you kidding me? These are the people who need our care the most. They are without resources. And again, I say, as a trauma therapist, I've got a master's degree in counseling, and this is what I do for a living, is I counsel with people who have had severe trauma in their lives, and whether that's a preschool child or an elderly person. And when you have trauma, it changes the way you think. Trauma literally changes the brain. And people who've had trauma, whether it's abuse, as overwhelmingly, almost every woman in prison has had some form of trauma. Can we not listen to that overwhelmingly sobering statistic and look at that through a lens of compassion and kindness? We don't need to judge what that woman has done. In my research, I do not ask what ladies have gone to prison for. I don't need them to tell me. You know why? Because I don't need to know. I don't need to know. It doesn't change anything. So, I'm challenging you. Can you take that same view and look at people in prison? You don't need to know why they've gone. Look at them through their humanity and offer programs. And I don't care who we are. We've got something to give. Could you take a stamp and write a letter, send a card to somebody in prison? And there are programs that'll set you up and connect you with someone in prison. Just send a card, a Mother's Day card. These moms need a Mother's Day card. Send a small Christmas gift. Just a little bit of funding to help her buy some stamps where she can send a card to her child. A lot of women are in prison. They don't even have the pennies that it takes to send a birthday card to their own child. That's a blessing. I'll tell you something else. Mentors, policymakers, folks out there in the community. I hate to burst your stereotype here, but these ladies, they want to succeed. And something else? They love their kids. They love their kids with a passion and a heart that breaks every single day. Their heart breaks for their children. They miss their children. If you could do something, our system is really broken to where things like long distance phone calls, transportation. When a mom is in one city and her children live 4 hours away and visitation's only a few hours, maybe on a weekend, it's almost not even worth it to drive. And that's if you can get somebody to drive the children to go visit their mom in prison. You know what? Folks in churches and other community groups, you could set up a wonderful, wonderful group in your community to just drive these families to go visit their mom and their daughter, their wife in prison. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I can tell you that marriage is just under terrific strain in prison. It is really hard for women who are hardwired relationally. If our policymakers could help get behind programs, again, inside the prison. Don't wait till these ladies get out. They need it now. They're sitting there. They're waiting for these programs. Talked to several ladies who were saying, give me some programs. I want to learn. I want to make use of this downtime. Let me use this time so that when I come out, I'm a better person. I know more. I've learned. I want to create a new and healthy and good life. I want to learn from this experience. Folks, policymakers, whoever you are, please know that. If you know nothing else, know that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Now, before we get ready to close, because I'm going to just share, I want you to share a little bit more. I have Miss Wanda Muhammad. A couple of weeks ago, we had some of the men to speak. The Upson 46 were a group of men that were in county jail that were being held on the RICO Act without having an opportunity to make their case. And so Ms. Wanda wrote in and asked that we would just give an update. And she said 3 moms were on Alicia Blakely's show on Tuesday to give an update on our sons. They are still being held without bond. Trial has been moved to November. These men have been here now nearly almost a year, if I'm not mistaken, and we just want to get more information out. She said Ms. Blakely gave us the context that this is about a promise that Governor Kemp made to eradicate gang activity in Georgia. None of them committed a crime in Upson County. So she says, last, their rights are being violated. Speedy trial, excessive bonds, weak evidence clearly indicates in the Bill of Rights. So she just wanted us to share that we need to get the word out to get them some help. And thank you for doing this. So for those listeners right now, you've heard us speak about the Upson 47. Whatever you can do to get news out, to try to at least get these men some representation. Because here in America, we are supposed to be innocent until proved guilty. And so, Ms. Wanda, we got that information out for you, and we will continue to get that information out. And now, ladies, I am so grateful, Miss Marianne, for you and Miss Tracy. Thank you for coming out today and sharing your heart. Thank you for encouraging the women that are listening in. And also, thank you for motivating and moving others to do what you're doing. Hopefully that this makes a difference because I, like the two of you, am a strong proponent of faith. I'm also a minister, a motivational speaker, and mentor. And it is my heart's desire to try to do 2 things. Number 1, change what's going on in the prison reform. And number 2, change the narrative on the outside about returning citizens and recidivism. Many of us have come home and we are doing great. We may have started off wrong, but we can all finish strong. And that's what we desire to do. So ladies, in closing, you have something you want to say in closing, Miss Marianne, before we shut down?
I just want to thank you for this opportunity and how motivating, and it is so inspirational, to just be on this journey. And I learn, and every day I do this, I'm humbled by the stories of recovery and health and love and dignity. Every lady I've met is just cloaked in dignity. I've been stunned, and I wasn't really expecting to see a lot of that. And every one of them, they are just full of dignity and with a hope for the future. And every one of them got help. Every one of them got some kind of resource. And to me, that means if they don't get the resources, then they're really compromised in their recovery and going back to parenting their children and raising their family and then creating children who go into the next generation. So these programs work.
Do you want us to continue? I have your information. Do you want us to continue to give your information out to those women who are, okay, got you. We will make sure we do that continuously. And what about you, Tracy? You have any closing remarks?
I do. I just want to remind everyone, no matter what situation that you're in, and I know the topic of conversation tonight was about incarcerated women, but whatever you find yourself in, that does not dictate your life. That is not the catalyst. Just because you made one decision, and you could have made the same decision 20 different times, that is not the definition of your life. And so that doesn't have to be the defining moment. It could be the catalyst into you becoming the greater individual that you are. So those things in the past, that's just what they are. They're in the past. You have the ability to create a different type of life based on the new decisions that you make. And know that there's a myriad of support out here. And we're working to get that support on the inside so that when you do transition out, you have a support system and a foundation to be able to stand upon to rebuild your life and restructure your life so that you can be successful. So just remember that that does not dictate who you are. Your choices, your bad choices, does not dictate who you are. You're not labeled. You don't have to live under the stigma. And I'm a living witness of that. The stigma of a felonious background. I don't have to wear that on my head or on my shoulders anymore. And even when I did, I took the rejection. Did it feel good? No. In the moment, it did not. But I had to knock the dust off my shoulders, square my shoulders, and keep going. And you have to just know you have to keep pushing because there's victory and there's success on the other side of this.
Amen. Thank you, ladies, for your time, your services. Thank you for your passion as well. If there's anything that I can do, both of you have my number. Please feel free to call, reach out, and I will do what I can to assist you. To our viewers, we want to thank you. You can continue to share and tell others that there are people in their corner, and God also sees what's going on. And we just love you. I'll talk to you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Good night.
Thank you.